The Surge 2 is the upcoming Souls-like sequel from German developer Deck 13. If you haven't heard of these guys, they've been around since the early noughties, but for the last half-decade have been doing their best to capture the magic of Dark Souls. First came their competent clone, Lords of the Fallen, which stayed true to the fantasy setting, but was perhaps a little too shameless in its reverence for From Software's game design. Then in 2017, The Surge thrust familiar mechanics into a dystopian future where robots and drones do all the work and the out-of-work humans play dress-up in exosuits and rock'em sock'em each other out of boredom.
Hey, he was talking to me! No, he was talking to me! Why, you...
To be fair, it was a little more nuanced than that and proved to be a cool setting, although its potential was never properly realised, which is something they're looking to rectify with The Surge 2. The game is out in September, but I've got my hands on a preview build which showcases about 4 hours of content. So here's what I thought of Scary Robot Souls number 2. Starting out, you're able to design your own character. This feature wasn't in the first game, so it will mean a lot to some,
Those eyes.
less to others, and ultimately nothing to anyone when you get your first helmet and hide the fruits of hours of meticulous design. While the story is unclear at this stage, the cliches are lathered on thick as you wake in a prison cell with amnesia. What I guess is happening is humanity is struggling to survive in a world ravaged by some kind of Skynet-level encounter with AI. At any rate, the Great Civil War seems to have subsided long enough for humanity to get back to what it does best, just killing each other. The preview put me in Jericho City, which I would describe as a pretty generic sci-fi meh if it didn't have a giant pink octopus building in the middle of it. Think Splatoon's Inkopolis, just a little more of this. What the city lacks in charm, it makes up for in characters. There are plenty of non-hostile NPCs, some of which have some pretty fun dialogue trees.
You did an amazing job back there.
And it does help to make the world feel lived in and less like the series of goon-filled corridors it actually is. Exploring the streets eventually leads to one of the few med bays found throughout the world, and these serve as hubs for healing, leveling, and upgrading gear. Each time you die, you'll respawn at the last one you visited. So yeah, they're essentially sci-fi bonfires. Much like the original Dark Souls, the world is cleverly interwoven and connected. After methodically and carefully killing your way through an area, you're often rewarded with a door or lift which connects you back closer to the hub. It's almost a bit too generous in this regard, as there are no really long, challenging runs you have to do more than once, at least in this preview. This is still very much an RPG, as you'll trade collectible tech scraps to up your health, stamina, and battery efficiency. These scraps drop when you die and can be recovered, and while a timer counting down forces you to race back to grab them, they also provide a passive proximity heal, which can come in handy to defeat whoever bested you the first time around. Other useful passives come in the form of augmentations. These can be collected and hot swapped in and out of slots as needed. And on top of this are upgradable gear sets and an array of weapons with varied styles, which make the combat impressively deep. It's at least worth checking out each weapon type to see how it handles and executes. Ultimately, the only part of this game that actually needed to work was the combat, which I think they've nailed. As with all Souls-like, there's a real beauty to the dance of a 1v1 fight as you learn enemy attack patterns and manage your stamina with controlled dodges and strikes. I would have liked to see a few more open areas to appreciate these fights, as the combat animations don't play out well in confined spaces, of which there are a lot. The healing system is reminiscent of Bloodborne in that it rewards aggressive play. As you strike enemies, you build up battery charge, and the cells can then be converted into a decent chunk of health. As a bonus, if you fill up battery cells but avoid taking damage, you can then store health kits as reserves for later. To balance this, enemies tend to do pretty hefty damage, but if you're clever about your next engagement, you can easily gain your health back, and then some. The most iconic feature from the first game returns in the targeting system, which lets you focus on specific body parts for greater damage, before using one of the aforementioned battery bars to remove that part entirely with a brutal finisher. Targeting specific armoured limbs can also drop schematics or mats for that appendage's armour set, so it is more than just a flashy way to pull enemies apart.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've heard worse.
New in this game is a little drone companion that can fire shots from a distance. It's a handy tool to clear pesky enemy robots, and it too has upgrades and learns new tricks. Overall, there's a distinctly double A vibe to The Surge 2, with a lot of unpolished and dated design. But I don't care, I like it. And after a messy but undeniably controller shake-inducing boss battle with this fatty at the end of the preview build, I am more than raring to dive deeper into this Souls-like dystopian sequel.